Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we are going to try to tackle something I think a lot of us struggle with, and that's procrastination.
Oh, yeah.
But not just like, the simple, oh, I'm lazy kind of procrastination. We're going to go a bit deeper based on the book that you shared.
Right.
Yuen Shui Wei Shimi.
Yeah, it's a great book. It was written by a couple of California psychologists, Burka and Lenora Yuen, who've worked extensively with people who procrastinate.
And it sounds like from the reviews, it's not just a book for the chronic procrastinator.
Right.
It's really a book about sort of the psychology of why we put things off.
Yeah.
And kind of reframes it as not a moral failing, but something a little deeper.
Right. It's not a character flaw. Exactly.
Yeah.
Fitness Magazine said that it was insightful in that it shifts the perspective on procrastination from being a personal failing to a psychological syndrome that's often triggered by fear. And I think that that's actually what's so valuable about it, is that it gives you this different lens to look at it through, and it offers hope.
Yeah, I think that's so important because, if we can sort of reframe it in our minds, it's not just me being lazy. It's like there's a reason.
Yeah.
Then maybe we can kind of work with that.
Exactly.
So it sounds like this is like a very positive framing. It's not going to shame you. It's gonna offer kind of hope and
Solutions. That's a big part of it. Yeah.
And it sounds like it goes into the causes and the various forms.
Yeah, there are a lot of different flavors of procrastination. It's not just one thing. And the New York Times noted how it explores the various roots and forms of procrastination and what some of the benefits of overcoming procrastination might be.
Right.
And those benefits include things like, improved performance, greater enjoyment of life.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, who doesn't want that, right?
Yeah.
So, and then some other unanticipated benefits as well.
Okay, great. So it's very specific. It's giving us a lot of good information there, and the Honolulu Star Bulletin praised the book for its practicality.
Yes.
So many times I feel like self-help books are very theoretical. It's like, well, just be better.
Think better thoughts.
Right. Think better thoughts. Be happier. It's like, yeah, how do I actually do that?
Right. Well, this one actually lays out some clinically effective treatment methods. So it's going beyond just like airy-fairy concepts.
I like that.
And apparently it does so with a great deal of humor and warmth, and the writing is such that it doesn't feel like a dry academic text. And it offers solutions right away.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I think so often with this kind of stuff, it's like, well, we'll get to the solutions later, but first we're going to beat you up about how bad you are.
Right.
So this is great. So I think what we want to do today is really deep dive into this book. And I love that the Honolulu Star Bulletin, said it's written in a very engaging way. So that's kind of what we're going for here.
Absolutely.
So today our mission is to unpack those core reasons behind why we procrastinate.
Yeah. Let's unpack that.
Okay.
So the authors, they start out by suggesting that procrastination isn't simply like a habit that you can pluck off and throw away.
Good.
It's more like a dandelion.
Okay.
So you can pluck off the visible part, but it's got these deep interconnected roots, emotional, physiological, and interpersonal, that just allow it to keep coming back.
Oh, wow. That's a really great analogy.
Yeah.
Because you think you've gotten rid of it, and then boom, it pops up again.
Right.
So let's talk about those roots. I'm interested to know more. So what are some of the emotional roots of procrastination?
Well, emotionally, the book points out that it can function as a way for people to avoid discomfort.
Right.
So it masks a deeper fear. And often that fear is about not being acceptable.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting because, they say that it's actually often easier to criticize ourselves for procrastinating than it is to actually confront the vulnerability of trying and maybe not being good enough or being rejected.
It's easier to be mean to ourselves than to try and possibly fail.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. So it's almost like self-sabotage.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. It really is. And what's interesting about it is that in doing that, constantly avoiding these underlying feelings, you're actually, it's like you're walking on eggshells, basically. Yeah. It's like you're afraid to touch these things. So, it creates an imbalance.
Okay. So it's almost like there are these like landmines.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to avoid them at all costs. And the way that you avoid them is by procrastinating.
Exactly. And so a big part of what they talk about in the book is identifying these fears, these underlying fears. And they say there are a lot of fears that we have, but they categorize them into fear of failure, fear of success,
Oh, interesting.
and then a fear of losing control, being controlled.
Wow.
And so recognizing that fear is really the first step to actually taking charge.
Okay. So it's not just about time management. It's about like really understanding those deeper fears that are driving our behaviors.
Just like that.
I want to go back to the time management thing though for a second.
Okay.
Because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Is just like the feeling of not having enough time or mismanaging their time. So what does the book say about that?
Well, they talk about how procrastinators have a very complex relationship with time. And they distinguish between what they call subjective time, which is, the time as the procrastinator experiences it,
Right.
versus clock time, which is like deadlines and schedules and things.
Right.
And this difference can lead to a lot of difficulty with meeting deadlines and maintaining consistent progress on things.
Well, and I think it also can cause problems in relationships.
Absolutely.
Because if you have a different sense of time than let's say your partner or your boss or a coworker, then that can create a lot of friction.
Yeah, that can really amplify procrastination and lead to a lot of misunderstandings.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with other people who are more in the clock time space and you're in the subjective time space.
And it's not just psychological, right?
Right.
The book also goes into the physiological roots of procrastination.
Yeah.
Like how our bodies and our brains and even genetics might play a role.
Right. Right. And so that brings up the question, like, to what extent are we wired for this, or is it something that we can actually change?
Right.
And they talk about this concept called neuroplasticity,
Okay.
which is basically the brain's ability to reshape itself. Oh, wow.
Through new experiences.
Okay.
So what they're suggesting is that, these physiological tendencies are not necessarily permanent obstacles.
Okay, so there is hope.
There's hope.
Okay.
You can actually rewire your brain.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked about the emotional roots, the sort of time management piece, and the physiological.
Right.
What about the interpersonal roots?
Yeah.
How do our relationships and our social standing affect our tendency to procrastinate?
Well, they talk about how, our family background, our social relationships, and even our current social status
Okay.
can actually play a role in our tendency to procrastinate. And they say it's important to really understand how these external factors are shaping our self-perception and our interactions.
Right. So it's not just happening in a vacuum.
Right.
It's being influenced by who we're surrounded by. Absolutely. And, understanding that influence is critical because our past experiences and our social environment can really contribute to these fears and beliefs that we develop that then ultimately drive procrastination.
Okay.
It's a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, if you grew up in a household where, there was a lot of pressure to achieve, you might be more likely to procrastinate as an adult because you're afraid of not living up to those expectations.
Makes sense.
Right.
So we've got this big overview, right? We've talked about all these potential routes.
Yeah.
Now, the book goes into a lot of specifics.
Right.
Starting with chapter 1, which is procrastination, annoying pest or formidable foe.
Yes. And they start out just by giving like the dictionary definition,
Okay.
which is, probably what we would all expect. It's to put off until tomorrow.
Okay.
And, it comes from the Latin pro, meaning toward, and crustinus, meaning belonging to tomorrow.
Okay.
So quite literally pushing things into the future.
Yeah. And then the book goes into like the historical context of procrastination.
Yeah.
Which I find fascinating.
It's really interesting because
it's not like, a modern phenomenon. It's been around for a while.
Yeah, it's a human thing. Apparently, the ancient Egyptians even had 2 different words for procrastination.
Oh, wow.
One of them actually had a positive connotation, and it referred to this kind of beneficial practice of, saving energy.
Okay.
By avoiding unnecessary work or acting impulsively.
Okay.
But then there was another one which had a negative connotation, and it described the harmful habit of neglecting essential tasks. And they give an example of like the optimal planting season during the Nile flood cycle.
Oh, okay.
So, you miss that window and then things are going to be bad.
Yeah. So, it sounds like, even way back then, there was an understanding that there's a good kind of putting things off,
Yeah.
and then there's a bad kind of putting things off.
Yeah.
And they even include a quote from Samuel Johnson back in 1751, who observed how we procrastinate the duties of life to the very last day, and when death appears at hand, we have no recourse but to call for a priest.
Wow.
And he called it a general weakness of mankind.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like this is a new thing.
No, it's not. It seems like it's maybe even gotten worse since the book was originally published.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they cited some pretty daunting statistics from 2007. They said that something like 75% of university students procrastinate,
Wow.
and half of them consider it a problem.
Wow.
And then in the general adult population, 25% of adults have chronic procrastination problems, and over 95% of all procrastinators want to reduce it.
Wow, that's a huge number of people. So it really is, it's not just like a few of us who are struggling with this.
It's a lot of us, and it also tells us that most people recognize it as a problem and would like to do something about it.
So then the question becomes, if there's such a strong desire to stop, why is it so hard?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Well, the book points out that research actually has shown that there is no correlation between intelligence and procrastination.
So I can't blame it on being a dummy.
You can't blame it on being a dummy, no.
All right, well, that's one myth, but
One myth busted, yeah.
but it sounds like they don't really have like a simple answer for why it's so hard to stop.
No, they don't pretend that there is. They say it's actually a very complex interplay of all kinds of psychological factors.
Okay.
But there isn't just one procrastinator type, right?
Okay.
There are a lot of different reasons. But they do point out a couple of interesting things. Men tend to procrastinate slightly more than women.
Oh, well.
And then the tendency to procrastinate actually decreases as we age.
Oh, interesting. Do they have any theories on why that is?
Well, they suggest that maybe that's due to, as we get older, our perspective on time changes, right? We start to realize that, time is finite.
Yeah.
We're running out.
Right. And then also maybe because there's less pressure to compete later in life.
Okay.
And then they also suggest that maybe it's just, greater self-acceptance.
Okay. So we're kind of more okay with, who we are, warts and all.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's not just students or people who are self-employed, right?
Well,
it cuts across all demographics.
yeah, they give examples. It affects students, obviously, with the pressure of grades and exams and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Self-employed individuals, without that external oversight, they tend to procrastinate more. People in competitive work environments.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, in bureaucratic settings where things just kind of move slowly and the processes are really rigid.
Yeah, it can feel very stifling.
Yeah. And then also, in domestic tasks,
Yeah.
just the endless array of household chores.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yes. Cleaning, laundry, all that.
So how do we know whether it's, just I'll deal with it later?
Or whether it's actually genuine procrastination.
Yeah. How do we make that distinction?
Well, they say the crucial difference is the distress that it causes.
Okay.
So does the delay generate significant anxiety or guilt or other negative emotions?
Yeah.
And they give some examples of people who might delay tasks without feeling a lot of distress, like people who actually thrive under pressure.
Okay.
Those last minute kind of adrenaline junkies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also, people who are just naturally laid back.
Yeah.
And then people who actually, consciously make different priorities. Like they're just choosing to focus on other things.
Right.
And that's fine.
Right. It's a choice.
It's a choice, yeah.
So it sounds like the key here is it a conscious choice or is it something that's beyond your control and is causing you genuine discomfort?
Exactly.
And the consequences of procrastination can range from internal to external, can't they?
Yeah. Like internally, you might feel annoyed with yourself or regretful or maybe even despairing. But externally, it can have some pretty serious consequences on your job, on your relationships.
Absolutely. They give some real knock your socks off examples.
Okay. Like what?
Well, they talk about this lawyer who ended up getting his license suspended.
Oh, wow.
Because he was just constantly delaying things and missing court appearances and things like that. And then there was this couple who, they had planned this anniversary trip and he had to cancel at the last minute because of work procrastination. And that actually led to a divorce.
Oh, no.
And then they talk about, An accountant who was fired for lying. He actually said that he had a family illness when really he was just procrastinating. He hadn't gotten the work done. And then this mortgage broker who lost his job and had to actually relocate his family because instead of processing loan applications, he was busy teaching computer software.
Wow.
So, I mean, those are some pretty serious consequences. Yeah, that's not just like, forgetting to pay a bill or something. That's life-changing stuff.
Right.
So for many procrastinators, it's not just like a one-time thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a cycle. It's a pattern.
Yeah, and the book introduces this concept of the procrastination cycle.
Okay.
And this is a common sequence of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that people experience, from the moment the task is assigned to its eventual completion or abandonment.
Okay.
And it can unfold over, a period of weeks or months or even years.
Wow.
Or, for some people, it can happen very, very quickly in just a few hours. But the stages themselves, they tend to share some common characteristics.
Okay, so what are the stages of this cycle?
Okay, well, it often starts with stage 1, which is this time I'll start early.
Oh, okay.
So, you get a new task.
Right.
You're feeling optimistic and you're like, yeah, this time I'm going to be organized. I'm going to get it done well in advance. And there might be a little bit of resistance to actually starting right away.
Right.
But, there's this underlying assumption that it's just going to naturally fall into place. But then as time passes, that initial confidence often just transforms into worry.
Yeah.
Stage 2. I better get started soon. So the opportunity to begin early, that's past. And that kind of positive vision you had, it starts to fade.
Yeah.
Anxiety starts to creep in as the pressure to actually begin increases. You realize it's not going to happen effortlessly. It's going to require some conscious effort.
Right.
But there's still some time left, so there's still this kind of lingering hope.
Right.
Right? And then stage 3, what if I don't start?
Oh, boy.
Time has continued to pass.
Yeah.
You still haven't begun. Now, the question is not about, the ideal time to start or whether you should actually start pushing yourself.
Right.
That lingering optimism is gone. It's replaced by this feeling of foreboding.
Oh, no.
And you start to actually imagine the potentially disastrous consequences of never even beginning.
So this is like the full-on panic stage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there are a lot of those classic procrastination behaviors that start to emerge in this stage.
Oh, like what?
Well, first of all, you've got the regret and the self-blame, right?
Right. I should have started earlier.
I should have started earlier. All this time I've wasted. I can't believe I did this to myself. They actually quote someone in the book who says, I always regret it afterward.
Right.
And then that's when we start to get those displacement activities.
Okay, what are those again?
Well, those are, suddenly you're organizing your desk, you're cleaning the house, you're experimenting with a new recipe. All these things that you were avoiding before suddenly seem incredibly appealing.
Right, and urgent.
And you immerse yourself in these things and you feel, well, at least I'm getting something done.
Right. I'm being productive.
But of course, the main task is still just sitting there.
Untouched.
Right. And then, even when procrastinators try to distract themselves with enjoyable activities like, watching movies or playing video games or socializing, it often backfires.
Okay.
Because the enjoyment is really tainted by this guilt and worry and resentment about this looming task.
Right. Like you can't even relax and enjoy it because you're thinking, I should be doing that other thing.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And then, the shame starts to set in. And, as the deadline approaches and then there's really no visible progress, they start to feel embarrassed. And they might try to conceal the situation, pretending to be busy when they're not, fabricating progress, avoiding contact with anybody who might uncover their secret. And, there are even some extreme cases in the book where people make up like elaborate excuses.
Like what?
Like their grandmother died or something like that.
Oh, no. So it's not just like, not doing the thing. It's actually like actively trying to cover it up.
Exactly. It's almost like, a self-protection mechanism.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this feeling of dread. We're trying to cover it up.
Right.
What's next?
Well, then comes stage 4, which is that brief and often desperate glimmer of hope.
Okay.
There's still time.
Okay.
So despite all of the guilt and shame, there's still this clinging to the belief that a miracle might occur.
Right. I can still pull this off.
I can still pull this off, yeah. But often that hope just kind of fades as reality sets in.
Yeah.
And that's stage 5. There's something wrong with me.
Oh.
So now the worry shifts from the task itself to a deeper sense of self-doubt.
Right. So it's not just, oh, I'm not going to get this done. It's, I'm a failure as a human being.
Right. I'm a failure as a human being.
Right.
I'm not disciplined enough. I'm not courageous enough. I'm not intelligent enough. I'm just not lucky, that kind of thing.
Wow. So it's really, it's gone from like this specific task to like a global judgment of yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they quote someone in the book as saying, everyone else can do it.
Right. Why can't I?
Why can't I? Exactly. And then that brings us to the critical decision point.
Okay.
Stage 6, final decision, to do or not to do.
Oh. Okay, so this is where the rubber meets the road.
This is where the rubber meets the road. And there's really a fork in the road at this point.
Okay.
The first choice is not do.
Okay.
And that can manifest in a couple of different ways. One is, I can't stand it anymore.
Okay.
Just feeling so overwhelmed by the pressure and the lack of time that continuing just seems impossible.
Yeah, I'm just going to give up.
I'm just going to give up. And they actually quote someone in the book who says, I just can't take it anymore.
Wow. Yeah.
The other flavor of not doing is, what's the use? At this late stage, there's this belief that on-time completion is no longer even possible.
Right. It's too late.
It's too late. Why even bother? Yeah.
They just give up.
So they either give up because it's too much or they give up because they think it's too late.
Exactly.
Okay. And then the other choice is?
The other choice is, do stick with it.
Okay.
And that often starts with, I can't wait any longer. The pressures just become unbearable.
Mm-hmm.
And they're finally forced into action out of sheer desperation. And then, interestingly, they often experience this. It's not so bad. Why didn't I start sooner?
Right. This isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
This isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. What was I so worried about?
Yeah. I could have been done by now.
I could have been done by now.
Right.
And then finally, the focus narrows to just get it done. The priority is completion above all else. Quality kind of goes out the window at this point.
Right.
It's just about getting it done. And they're just racing against the clock.
So that brings us to the final stage, right?
Right.
Stage 7.
Stage 7. I'll never procrastinate again.
So whether they abandon the task or whether they, just barely got it done, they have this huge sense of relief.
Right.
And exhaustion, and the experience is so unpleasant that they're like, I'm never doing this again.
Right.
I'm going to start earlier next time. I'm going to be more organized. I'm going to manage my anxiety better. I'm going to stick to my plans, all those things.
Yeah, all the good intentions.
All the good intentions.
Yeah.
And they really, really mean it at that point.
Right.
But then, of course, the next task comes along.
And the cycle starts all over again.
And the cycle starts all over again.
So the book talks about some of the reasons why we procrastinate.
Yeah.
And one of the common things that comes up is like the pressure of our modern society.
Right.
We're supposed to be perfect and we're supposed to be successful and we're supposed to have it all.
Right. And if you feel like you don't measure